Salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to today's upload. And it is one very shocking experience. Before we jump into it, a quick couple of links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Alright, so if you have been with this channel for 3+ years, you would know that I have a fascination with looking into government cover-up, media reported government cover-ups, like Dr. Nancy Shaw, Brenda Hamilton, Corey Godsey, Tony Aarons, Amber Miller. I could keep going on and on and on. There was a location in Virginia. Now, a area of the size of a very small county called Tazewell County in Virginia. There was multiple deaths, multiple disappearances in a 2-year period of time. It was so much so that they ended up having to send state police, Tazewell County sheriffs into Tazewell and the surrounding areas like Mercer, West Virginia, and McDowell County, West Virginia, to look at there's caves. There's all these cave systems that are in these little communities. Now, I really dove deep, and ended up recording a police officer telling us that on a recovery of a body for Richard Timothy Honecker, they had searched the area a year before. The guy had went missing. And they searched the area 1 year prior, the exact same area. And a year later, they find his body in a culvert tunnel, torn apart and stuffed in this culvert. Well, I called the Tazewell County Sheriff's Department, and it was 11 p.m., somewhere around there, maybe a little earlier, 10 p.m., we'll say. The deputy that I was speaking to that answered the phone, I said, "My name is Jeff Nadolny. I'm an independent journalist, and I'm just asking about the Richard Timothy Honecker case. If you could tell us about the body in the culvert in that tunnel." And he said, "Which one?" Crazy thing, media never broke that story that there was another body in that culvert tunnel. So that whole area, to me, was a hotbed of government goings on and Dogman, Bigfoot. experiences attacks and so on. Now, Sunday evening, I had the opportunity of talking to a sheriff's deputy from Wyoming County, West Virginia, which just sits right above McDowell in Mercer County, West Virginia. And it's a hop, skip, and a jump away from Tazewell. And everything that this deputy told me, I hadn't Google mapped the location when we were talking, because he had sprung the call up on me. It was he wanted to get it done. He wanted to get it done at a certain time and this and that. And I was busy myself, but I said, you know what? I'll just take the call, and I won't be in my studio, but I'll still take the call and talk to him because it's important. So when I get home and I Google map the location of his experience, everything that he said made so much more sense. And for me to say it made sense after you hear the insanity in his experience, is pretty insane as well. So, a gentleman named Ray, who's a Wyoming County, West Virginia Sheriff Deputy. And June of 2014, there had been 2 teenage boys that had gone missing. They were from Mullins, which is a kind of a little village in Wyoming County. So I guess their last known location was in an area kind of west of Mullins. Last known location was an area it was close to Cabin Creek, a campsite by Cabin Creek, about a mile west of the Red Trail Lookout area. And which Google mapped that, it's a very isolated area. And when I say campsite, it's because there is no campsites out there. This was just their kind of campsite. And the people their parents that they had notified, they vaguely knew. I think one of the dads knew where that campsite was. But they did notify people, being at such a young age. And sometimes kids don't, There's a lot of times kids just think they know better than the adults and just go and do it, and sometimes never come back. So I guess they had been camping up in this region for a couple of days. It's summer, and they are kind of just being teenage boys, just getting away from home. Now, they end up finding the campsite, and there is no evidence of them being there for at least 24 hours. Their fire pit was cool. There was just nothing to say, hey, these kids were here in the morning, woke up and went hiking. And none of it made any sense. Also, their campsite was untouched, so they had just kind of maybe a day or two been missing, not long enough for any kind of wildlife to invade their campsite and whatnot. So they do find the campsite, and they start to look at this now as, instead of, because at first they immediately think 2 16-year-old boys, we're going to go with our gut. What do 16-year-old boys, what are they into? And, he said, we were told, right from the very beginning that, this may be a case of these kids just went to party and, something happened. They got lost in the woods, or maybe they were out there to buy drugs, meet somebody, this and that. They were kind of given bad information about these two boys, because both kids were very good in school. Great. Their parents, great kids, nothing out of the ordinary for whoever passed it down to the deputies and the search and rescue teams to say, maybe they're drug addicts and this and that. The government loves to do that. And when I say government, I mean county, state, right down to, the smallest of, and that would be like village, town government, and obviously the feds. So they like to confuse us and not fill in a lot of gaps, leave a bunch of gaps kind of wide open, so we as the public can think about the cases and fill in our own gaps, like with Tony Aaron's Amber Miller, where they said, or Christopher Whiteley down in Lipin, Texas, those three kids, and I will say kids because they're a hell of a lot younger than me when they passed away. Instead of viewing them as a victim, they just viewed them as in trouble with the law, mental illness, and drug addiction. So that's just what they like to do. So already they had bad intel on these two young boys. So they come to the campsite, and Ray, along with another sheriff's deputy, are kind of walking around, and Ray's dad and his granddad had been, pretty expert like hunting, tracking, and whatnot. So Ray was pretty good at tracking and looking for clues of movement in the woods. Now, they had kind of walked west away from the campsite, more towards Cabin Creek, and then they proceeded to go a little north. Now, they are in the woods at this point. They're not on a, nature trail or whatever, because Ray had seen something to suggest that they were off the little trail that was in that area. They proceed to walk into the woods, pretty much just blaze their own trail. And what they come across is what appeared to be a kind of ground leveled hatched door in the woods. And around this hatched door was what appeared to be scuff marks and footprints, tracks, just tracks of someone had been there, and fairly recent. So they're both looking at each other, the two deputies, Ray and his fellow deputy, with a bit of confusion, because one, these guys are way deep into the woods, and there's a metal hatch in the woods, which was red flag number one for Ray. His partner, he said my partner was kind of the dimmest bulb in the box. he really couldn't see past, that there's a hatch door under or ground level. Let's open it and see where it goes. He couldn't really think about how unusual this is. There is nobody around. There is no kind of any reason for a hatched door to be there. They opened the hatch and they'd have their flashlights out. They also have their service pistols out because they don't know what may come up at them. This may be a meth lab as far as they know at that point. So they open this hatch, flashlights on, service pistols drawn, and what they see is this at least 20-foot metal ladder that is anchored into a cinder block wall that goes down at least 20 feet, pitch black. And Ray looks at the fellow deputy that is with him. Ray asked to leave him anonymous. He shared his real name with me, the other deputy. Ray does not care if he gets in any kind of trouble because this has bothered him and he questions it periodically to this day. So because of how strange what you are going to hear next is, we're talking miles in the middle of nowhere. There is just like service roads and trails. What they are seeing is a cinder block metal hatched door, cinder blocked kind of drop down with an anchored metal or cast iron ladder. And Ray looks at the other deputy and says, "That's really freaking weird." Like they're both looking around like there's just woods and kind of little mountains all around them. Nothing of any kind of where the hell did this come from? So they then decide we got to go down. What if the two boys are down there? Obviously, that's what they're thinking because of the scuff marks and kick marks that are around this. It does look like someone had just either came out or went in. They decide they take their descent and they go into this tunnel, and it is about 20 feet down. Both are down. They turn their flashlights, and what they see in front of them as they click their lights on, or their lights are already on, as they turn their lights down into the tunnel, is a long, dark tunnel. But this is not natural cave rock. This is not dirt where it was bored. This is an actual cinder block tunnel with a floor, not dirt ceiling. Everything is meticulously made. He said this thing must have cost millions of dollars to create in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia. And that is not me insulting West Virginia, because West Virginia, the people there and the area is absolutely beautiful. I have met so many great people from our country, but from West Virginia, everybody down that way that I've spoken to are just hearts of gold. But what he meant is this is like the most isolated area. For him to be like, when did they create this? And why don't we know about it as sheriff deputies? Why aren't we told to patrol this area? This is way beyond meth labs. They're walking down this tunnel, and all they see is darkness, darkness, darkness. And eventually they start to notice that their flashlight is less needed because for some reason there seems to be more light than before. And Ray stops and he says, hey, turn your flashlight off. I'll turn mine off real quick, but have it at the ready. I want to see something. And they both stop and they turn their flashlights off, and not very far ahead of them, they can see that there is lights. And he's like, what the hell? Both are, what the hell? Where are we? What is this? You know? And they turn their lights on and they proceed to walk. When they get to probably 150 feet from where they had just stopped and turned their lights off, they get to where the first kind of electrical outlet, or where a light fixture is. And there is no electricity out here. You know, like this makes absolutely no sense to both of these deputies. They yell out both these boys' names. And because now there are lights on, they're not just in this dank, dark tunnel. Maybe these two kids found this hatch and, you know, proceeded to walk. Maybe they found a set of switches to turn some lights on. We got to figure out where this goes. Now, they have been down in this tunnel for about a half an hour to 45 minutes. And it is deep. You know, they feel like an incline has gone on. And the walls, they can walk side by side. But they're not as wide as a vehicle, but it's a pretty wide wall, from wall to wall. Now, as they are walking, they don't realize how long they've been down here for, and two, that they have not heard their radio. They do realize that we lost radio contact when Ray tries to radio in, hey, you know, we found this tunnel system. We're making our way in. We think the boys may be down here. You want to send some backup down here to help us search the area just in case, this and that. And that's when Ray realizes, well, shit, we're kind of SOL on the radio. Let's go a little further. Now, if there was not a loss in radio contact, they would have known that they found these two teenage boys, about 2 miles west of this entrance. They had been hiking. They had been hanging out, just doing nothing. They had gotten lost from their campsite and couldn't find their way back to their campsite. That's why it looked like nobody was there, because nobody had been there. They had gotten lost. And judging from the area and everything that Ray said, I can see where 2 16-year-old boys would get lost. You know, they're not skillful yet in tracking and hiking and compass using and this and that, GPS, you know, whatever. These kids were not skilled. They are found. But if the thing is, and he says this, I wish I had realized we lost radio contact, because I would have figured something out. I would have had this other deputy wait at the end of the tunnel and stand there with the radio getting updates. So what they see next and what occurs next is not a coincidence. I believe they were meant to see all of this. They had traveled at least about a half a mile. And he kind of calculated that if that entrance and that ladder was about 20 feet, with the angle of the floor and how it went down, mind you, the ceiling didn't change in height, just the angle of the floor going this way. So each step they took, they were going deeper and deeper underground. They were probably 50 feet underground, on top of being surrounded by cinder block concrete, and in essentially a freaking long ass tunnel to what looked and appeared to be a bunker. Why is there a bunker out here? So they proceed to hike or walk in, and they start to hear kind of this squeal or screech of a noise. It's not human. It's not even a living sound. It's more or less like a mechanical or something completely out of the ordinary. It just, whatever it was not human nor animal. So they stop and kind of post up for a minute and listen. And they kick off a couple of ideas of, what do you think it is? Do you think someone's down here and this is their lab? Is it some rich millionaire? Is it the government? Because none of this is making sense. Whoever built this spent quite a bit of money, one, to build, but two, to keep it hidden from the public and police. So they post up, they stop, they hear the noise, and it's not a consecutive long drawn out noise. It's like a kind of like a screech or a squeal of some sort of non-life form noise, so a door, a squeaky door, or some sort of something. He could not figure out what it was, especially after what occurs. They step forward and they realize that they can't go any further because there's a wall and there is almost a 90-degree angle of the tunnel continues at a 90-degree angle, and they both stop right there. And if whatever is there, they don't know if it's a room or if it's more of a hallway or what they are going to see. All they know is there is light coming from there. There was a very strange noise that occurred twice, but non-drawn out and not created by a life. They both look at each other, and he says, on three. On three, what we'll do is we will both enter into that angle, that next set of the tunnel, or if it's a room. We will announce ourselves. We will have our pistols trained on whatever is in front of us. Even if it's those two teenage boys. One, we don't know if we have no idea now what is going on. These kids may have firearms if it's them. Or if it's a meth lab. But they don't smell the smell of chemicals or anything cooking. He said it didn't smell like a meth lab. He said it didn't smell like a drug den. But it was just so odd at how perfectly everything was made. It was all really measured perfectly, unbelievably, for where it is located. And 1, 2, 3, and they both go around this 90-degree angle. They both announce Wyoming County Sheriff's Department. Their sidearms are drawn, and it's just another piece of the tunnel. Another straight tunnel. And they keep walking. And at this point, both deputies realize that, hey, we're going at an angle now. You know, it went from like a very tiny slope of an angle to a, and they just keep going. They're talking quietly. What do you think this is? What's going on? I wish we had backup. I wish we had radio contact. No one knows where we are. They get to the end of this tunnel, which was not as long as the first one. It was well lit. And what they see in front of them is a kind of like a bunkered door that has a latch on it to open the door. It's a big metal, steel door, whatever, in front of them. The hallway finally ends and there's a door. Both of them are like, all right, well, there's a couple options of what's going to be beyond that door. The one I'm hoping for is, hell, it's another little small little chamber with a ladder leading up to the surface. Or well, it's going to be what they walked into, which neither one were ready for. He looks at the other deputy and says, all right, I'm going to open the door. When I open the door, you stand right here and you yell at your most commanding voice, your most authoritative voice, Wyoming County Sheriff's Department. And I'll pull the door open and I will join you like 2-3 seconds later. You know, we're side by side on this. He opens the door and it is heavy and he hears that screech noise, and he realizes both. They look at each other as he's opening this door. And it's heavier than he thought it was, so it took longer for him to open it. As he does, the other deputy is right on point, just perfect how everything was supposed to go down. You know, Wyoming County Sheriff's Department, no one move. You know, we're looking for and conducting an investigation. What is this? He opens it and realizes it's heavier. The deputy's in. He's now about 10 seconds behind him because of the weight of the door, and he was more or less worried he couldn't open it the whole way to have it rest against the wall. But being a heavy door and at an angle, that it's going to slam shut on both of them. So he does. He pushes it open and joins. When he joins, he does the same verbal command. Wyoming County Sheriff's Department. Nobody move. And what they are faced with is something that will haunt him for the rest of his life. They both make entrance. Him a couple of seconds behind, max 10 seconds behind. And what they are faced with will haunt him for the rest of his life. He does believe he will never forget what he saw. What he sees, at first he thought, was some sort of alien-like creature, because standing in front of him were two. They were at least 9 feet, no taller than 9 feet, but no shorter than 8. These things were just very tall, jet black. They had what appeared to be no clothing because he could make out scales, but they were black, kind of reptilian-like creatures. They both had tails that were on the ground. They had, they were humanoid. They were fully 100% humanoid minus the tail. They were very skinny but not narrow. Not monstrous in girth, muscle wise or whatever. They were just very slender build and somewhere between 8 and 9 feet. As they open and they are looking at this, what is in front of them, for the maximum time that they spent in this little chamber, was they saw that the room was about 50 feet cubed. Like, it was just a good sized room. And along the walls were what appeared to be cages, with what the ladder was made of, very similar to that material the ladder was made. And like an old school kind of jail, you know. In the middle was a table, not a medical surgical table, but like this kind of laboratory table or large kind of island thing in the middle of this room. One of these creatures is on the opposite side of that one, and the other one that is closest to them. So it appeared to be, as they entered that room, they were working or doing something on that platform, that table, the whatever it was. And they couldn't make out what was there. But it did appear to be some sort of body, and not a human body, an animal-like creation or whatever. And as he's scanning, he sees what appears to be some sort of computer-like device and different kind of entities or creatures in these cages. Now, he's getting the whole kind of glimpse of this as his partner is standing right next to him, and he's screaming out, you know, he's repeating Wyoming County Sheriff's Department. And he's almost like a broken record, you know. He's in shock. And he just keeps repeating that same Wyoming County Sheriff's Department. As he's repeating this, the creature closest to them turns totally to face both. That's when he gets a view of what this creature, that it is not wearing an outfit or some sort of suit, because he does now see that the tail matches the color of its body that they are looking at, and there are scales, and it has almost a kind of snout, but not really a snout of a lizard. There are 2 holes where its nasal cavity would be. Very large, yellowish, reptilian-like eyes. And it opens its mouth, and there are just rows of needle-like teeth, like very similar to that of a snake. It lets out this ungodly, terrifying shriek. And he to this day said, I am so glad that everything went down the way it did, because I was in shock. My partner was in shock. But when that thing let out that hiss or whatever that was, some sort of get the hell out of here, my partner mag dumped on this thing. Just repetitive shot after shot after shot after shot until he's click, 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 click. And he's just 5 or 6 times emptied freaking magazine clicking. And it's on the ground. It's dead. Clearly it's dead. And there is this ooze coming from it. The color of the liquid that was coming from this thing's body was a white color. It was a white milky substance. He grabs his partner and pulls him back to get a side of him, and he's back now to where he's trying to push the door shut with one arm and pull his partner back, or the other deputy, not partner, but the other deputy that was with him. And this door is solid. Like, it took him all his might to open the damn thing. It's taking all his might to close it, and he's only using one hand, and it's not budging real good. He gets behind and keeps pushing, and he looks in as he's closing the door, and he hears that squeal again. And this thing standing, the one that he didn't shoot, had jumped up on the table thing, and it looked like it was coming across this table like island in the middle of this room. And he remembers looking, because he said, you know how your brain, when you are scared or you're full of adrenaline and everything seems like it's moving so fast around you, but your brain still has time to take everything in. He said, I remembered about whatever was lying on the table, and sure as shit, this black reptilian-like creature is just standing on this, what he could see, maybe 4 foot long, brownish in color, brown fur in color, like creature. And it was dead, because how this thing jumped and landed on it. It really just, if it wasn't dead, it was hurt, because it got smushed when this thing landed. He said it must have weighed 600-700 pounds. And he looked at the other deputy and said, help me. And they push the door. They finally get the door closed. And they're looking at each other, and there's no kind of latch to turn or nothing. It's just closed. The handle to open it was, as he described, the old kind of refrigerator door that had like a handle that you pulled, an actual handle that opened it, instead of what we have nowadays where it's closed with like a suction. This had that kind of handle. That's the kind of door this was, but not for a refrigerator, for an obvious chamber of terror. They closed this door, and they kind of push on it and rest there for a couple of seconds. The deputy goes, holy shit, like, what was that? What the hell was that? And they just take off running. Ray says, we got to get the fuck out of here. Let's go. Let's go now. And they start running. They are in this lighted part of the area. They get to the L, and they start running more down this is the longest part of the hallway, and it is long. As they are running through the hall on the first part to where that chamber-like door was, they could feel the burn in their legs, because they're running uphill now. Instead of going deep down, they are now running, and they get to that intersection there, and they start running more. And they can see what they are coming into now, because as they were going initially into this tunnel-like system, there was no lights. It was all black in front of them until a certain distance away, and then there was mild, not bright lights, but then it got brighter as they went. And he fumbles around to get his flashlight. He's got his flashlight. He's got his service pistol in his hand. His partner is on the move, putting a new magazine in as they're running. And they get to almost where the darkness begins. They can see that nothing in front of them is lit up. The lights aren't like how they were. It's almost like the lights are gradually dimming, and it's pitch black at that point. They're running through the pitch black. When they get to that point where the lights dim are dimmed and then it's dark, they hear that screech, that squeal of that door, whatever noise that door is making, they hear it. And they just keep running. They both have their flashlights out, their service pistols are drawn, and they are running, hauling ass. Mind you, from the entrance of that tunnel to where that light, the first set of them seeing light, was almost 15 minutes. They had been underground in this long-ass tunnel to where they came to a chamber, and there's no telling how further it went. It might have gone even further than that because he didn't get a whole clear look. There might have been doors. It might have just branched off, he said. They're running and running and running for their lives because they know that noise that they heard, that one of those creatures is on the hunt for them. They get to where they can almost see the wall ahead of them. They see the ladder. And they keep beating feet. And they hear a noise behind them. Distance, but not too far and right not on their heels yet. They both turn and stop because they think that it's this monstrosity that, you know, that the other deputy had put down, that it's the other one. And what they see when they turn with their flashlights is something running at them, closing that distance with just the reddest hellfire eyes coming at them. And they can hear the breath, they can hear the breathing, and they hear a growl. They hear growls. And they just keep running. They turn around and he says, keep fucking running. Keep running and don't stop. When you hit that ladder, just go right up it. I'll be right behind you. But I've got, you know, I'll stand point when you get up there. But don't freaking dawdle. Get up that goddamn ladder because I don't know what's behind us. They're getting there and bam, they get to the... It was like time, you know, from that ladder to where the lights was 15 minutes. It was almost like there was, that time was cut in half from that point on to also the rest of the lights that were behind them, that faint light from the hallways was now pitch black. So whatever that creature was and whatever is tailing them, one of them had turned the lights off. They go up the ladder. Boom. He's on the ladder. He's just getting to the ladder. The other deputy's like wrestling and pushing on the door. And he's on the ladder and he looks and he sees what he only described as his first initial thought was a hellhound. He said it was this jet black, humongous, wide at the shoulders, so broad from shoulder to shoulder as it's running quadruped, at least 8 to 9 feet in length, not counting the tail. And it just stands up. And as it stands up, he hears this beautiful noise of that hatch opening. And its light is hitting down now. The other deputy gets out, he climbs up, and he's looking, and this thing is bipedally walking towards the ladder. And he gets out and kind of sits cocked back like this, because when he got out, he didn't immediately stand up. He was going to shut and lock that door. As he did, he started to shoot at this other creature that's coming at them. And he said that when his partner shot the reptilian, black reptilian-like creature there was no noise made when the bullets made impact, except thump, 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 it hitting. That creature did not make a noise. When he's shooting this canine-like monstrosity, and it's running at them still, and now it's walking, and he shoots it, there is a distinct noise of pain. Like each round hit it, and it let out this like oomph of, a menacing pain. His partner rushes over, and they both slam that door down and lock it. And as they get up, he gets up, and it hits the hatched door. Wham! And about the third hatched door hit, he gets the radio is back. We located the boys. Everything is A-okay. Hey, where are you two? What is going on with you two? Let me know. Just unbelievably insane. Boys safe. They're sitting there and they're looking at each other like, what the fuck did we just stumble into? They've got about another hour hike through the woods to get back to the camp and then to their vehicles. And they proceed, but they mark the pathway that they're taking to get back to this tunnel system. They get out and they meet up with other deputies and the sheriff. The sheriff's informed of, what just happened. Ray is asking questions out like, what the hell was that? You should see how, professionally built these cinder block walls and lantern, the lights above them. Whatever this was like not human. It was human made, but how was there electricity? And he's pushing this like, what? You don't know what we saw. You don't know. Like, how the hell did they get that many cinder blocks down here? How did they do this? How did they do that? Have you ever heard of anything in that area? Have you ever? And the sheriff's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. We got to get back to there. And the partner is questioned and such. And for some reason, they are told not to go back, that the military that they used, it was a military installation at one point, that the military will be back. They're notified, and they will take care of whatever is down there. But, it's probably a meth lab. You probably saw a meth lab. That's, or some good old boys, doing whatever, like a fucking moonshine sill. And he's like, this isn't what we saw. And these were not hillbillies. These were not meth heads. What we saw was what I'm telling you. And they're both ordered to shut up, stop talking. Do you want this in your jacket? Are you going to be do you need a vacation? It's bad enough that we're putting this in your jacket, that you are, disobeying direct commands and not talking about this until we can figure out what in the heck is going on out there. And he agrees that, whatever. I won't go there on duty. So they kind of let it go. The boys have no idea. Once again, they were just hiking and got lost. They have no idea what was just a couple of, about a mile away from their campsite. On his next day off, he tells his girlfriend where he's going, gives her the coordinates via GPS, because he had pinpointed the area as they got that door closed and locked. So he knew exactly where this was. And he goes back and he's standing there and he tries to budge the thing and it won't move. It won't move at all. And he looks, and where the opening or where the handle for that hatch would be to where you would turn it to open, it was like one full turn and it opened. There was beads of welding that door shut. And he's like, what the hell is going on here? You know, this is, one, beyond my pay grade. Two, what the hell? Now, he thinks 100% that what happened was the military or whoever, the government, was contacted and came down and did this weld and may have taken care of everything, but he's not sure because he wasn't there. Now, strangely enough, this is the one thing that topped 2014 for him was a couple of months after all this occurred that there was a military presence in Wyoming County. Now, supposedly, sometime later in the year, the Army's 101st Airborne Division had got grounded there because of a ice storm. There was not an ice storm in December in West Virginia during that time. It was cold, but there was not an ice storm. And the papers and any kind of media did say that there was an ice storm, but there was not. With 100% his memory, he's like, there was no ice storm. And he said, and I remember when this was made the news, thinking, why the hell is the 101st Airborne Division in Wyoming County? And he said, to probably take care of what is in those fucking woods. And that was his immediate thing. So what was it? I mean, a freak run-in. But here's the thing. We're talking millions of dollars to build such a complex tunnel. This isn't, this is cinder block walls, ceiling, concrete flooring at an angle. You've got cast iron ladders or whatever they were made in, anchored into the walls. Government looking doors that are thick as, just super thick. What was really going on? Who put the welds there? Who funded this? Why weren't we informed that there was some sort of strange kind of labyrinth under Wyoming County, West Virginia? And he said, the one reason I can come up with is because they wanted to keep it hidden from us. So, freaking crazy. And, you can look up the incident with the military coming and such, but it's just our government back to their old tricks. And there you have it, folks. I do hope you all enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and honestly what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.